Hello and welcome to Season 3 of the NGO Whisperer Show. My name is Carolyne Opinde. I am the founder of the NGO Whisperer. We are a consulting business that provides technical support to nonprofits so they can successfully impact people's lives. Joining us today from Chicago in the United States of America is Christopher D. Casson. Today, we will be talking about winning in life, autism to ARTism. Christopher, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
It is such an honor and a pleasure to have you, having met you for the first time during the 2019, the Next Global Impactor. We featured you on the NGO Whisperer magazine. And here we are today talking about winning in life, autism to ARTism. Christopher, share with us, who is Christopher D. Casson?
Well, I am a photographer, more recently a podcaster. I also an artist, and I happen to be on the autistic spectrum, more specifically Asperger's syndrome. And, kind of had a little bit of a difficult time growing up and adjusting to society, and eventually I just got to a low point, and then eventually just decide I want more out of life, and that eventually evolved to me deciding to kind of go a different route towards entrepreneurship, for trying to get a job instead of trying my best to go along with the daily grind that was a bit of a struggle for me to get hired for in the first place. And as I was going through that route with photography, which is my first and still current business, the thought came to my head that I wanted to be successful in entrepreneurship so that I could teach other autistics to be successful as well and to be as independent as possible. So I joined, local networking groups, and one of them, the head, ended up being one of the co-hosts for the Next Impactor, and he one day came up, and I was trying to find a way to link my photography with autism, and just, it's like there's that missing puzzle piece somewhere. And he just came, and he just told me, Jeff told me, how about you turn autism into ARTism? And it, like, just that instant, you can imagine like the cartoon light bulb popping above my head. Yeah. And I just ran with it. And just a few months later, the sign-in for the Next Impactor competition came, and I decided I wanted to use this concept to have us focus more on the ability rather than the disability, and more of a focus on what we can do instead of what we can't do, and to show that we have value and that we can contribute, and we want to contribute just like everyone else. We just have a couple of more hurdles than others.
I really like the way you have talked about this. Look at the abilities, not at the disabilities. And people who live with disabilities, or who are differently abled, as we always call them, are people who are just like me and you, except that they look or see life from a different perspective because of something in their lives. And when you look at the World Autism Day in 2020, the theme for the year was transitioning to adulthood. Would you please share with us how you were able to transition from when you were little, the difficulties and how you looked at life, and how that has evolved now as you transition? And I believe, anybody, even those who are not living with disabilities, they have to go through transitioning in life. Share with us what your experiences are.
Everyone technically goes through transitions. We just have like a different path, really, when you look at it. But for me, I have grown up with a lot of bullying, bullying, and sometimes it's from other students, and some it's from adults that don't exactly quite understand, and that brought a lot of issues and kind of made it rough. And what also made it rough for me is just being able to adjust to just being incorporated into society, especially after I got out of high school, where I ended up dealing with a lot of deaths in the family, which started with my late mother, and when it was in high school, and she and when she learned, when my parents learned that I was on the autistic spectrum when I was around 5 or 6, and she just took up the mantle and decided do her best to just study by, reading books by Temple Grandin, a very well-known autism advocate, and just, just trying to understand my world so that she could provide the best care that she could and help others understand. And I think that's something all parents should take note of, that don't just understand that we want to be able to communicate with you just as much as you want to communicate with us. It's just that we just have a different way of experiencing the world, and it's quite a hassle for us to be able to, just understand some basic things. So that's kind of sums it up for me all along my journey. It's just me adjusting to everything and learning to adapt when it's really difficult, such as going through college, which I was going for computer animation at first because I was really into video games. So of course, I really had it in my heart to just create my own video game. And looking back, it's like I wanted to use video games and just the expression of art just to be able to express myself in a way that words can't. Because in my opinion, words are useful, but they're also kind of limiting in the way when you look at it. And art could be just so expressful and can mean so many different things, So I'm guessing that's, and guess you could say that's why I went into that route, which of course first began with a video game called Myst. Actually, if you've heard of that, the computer game where you just explore around, and it was just something so different from the typical Super Mario Brothers and Sonic the Hedgehogs that I could be able to express myself in an interactive way that's different than just seeing a movie or just reading a book, And of course, I had some problems with being able to interact with other students. Basically, just trouble understanding social cues and whatnot, since that's just one of the things for me. And I just, and because of all the bullying and all the difficulties I went through, I had a very low self-esteem issue where I've heard bits here and there of me having autism, and eventually it got to a point where I felt like it doesn't matter what I'm going to do, my autistic traits are always going to hold me back, and sometimes wondered why bother. And it got to a point where I got really depressed. At times I got suicidal thoughts in my mind, and it was just some days where I just want to just lay down and just wait for myself to rot away, and just felt like there was nothing left for me. And I just, yeah. But, and during that whole time, I just kept trying to think of something, just to look forward to, just to help push me through those tough times. And eventually I did graduate, and once again, I was stuck with, of course, you gotta eventually search for a job. And for one example, I tried to go for one minimum wage job, and I was at the office dressed up, but I was just really, really nervous. If you think I kind of looked stuttering and kind of shaking, I was just literally shaking because I was just that interaction between people when I'm usually shy and just always wanting to just hide away in my room, just away from the world, just be away from all the noise and whatnot. And and of course I was just being honest. I'm on the autistic spectrum, and he did notice me shaking, and he was just telling me that's okay. But with the mannerisms and all, I still wonder sometimes if he was just doing his best to calm me down, or if he thought of the stereotype with the whole the autistic tantrum, and thinking maybe I might explode in his office at any minute. And it was, and that, of course, I didn't get the job, and unfortunately that, of course, lowered the self-esteem even more, because everything's going to hold me back. But eventually, I'm kind of skipping around with the story here, but eventually during college, it got to the point where I was just sitting by myself, and I overheard a group of fellow students during lunch. They were talking about working together to create a video game, and of course, it's almost like a barrier for me, like trying to punch through a wall just to be able to just go up and do something as simple as saying hi. And it was at that point where the thought just came to my mind, where this is now or nothing. You could either continue having your pity party here, or you could just simply go up. And eventually I did, and it felt like quite an accomplishment, because they did welcome me with open arms, because they loved my concept sketches. And while the game didn't go anywhere, it just felt like, finally making friends, when for a while I was just feeling like I was completely alone, even though I was surrounded by people.
That was
And
quite the experience, I can imagine. I mean, when you went to them and they embraced you, you probably were not
yeah,
thinking they would embrace you, but they did. And that was
yeah.
amazing. How did that make you feel after that?
Oh, it made me more excited, John, just being able to help them out and just, prove my worth, because we all want to just show what we can do. Yeah.
Speaking of showing people what you can do, you were among the top 5 winners of the Next Global Impactor.
Yep.
You share with people the journey, because it was quite the journey. It was a whole year of doing exercises and responding and going live and challenging yourselves in ways that you had never been. And for you, it was quite the experience. I
Yeah.
think people want to know about that.
Man, even before and then during that, because, man, even go beyond that, even with the photography. When I first started, I just wanted to do like nature and landscape prints. So I man, I could just talk so much, of that journey. It's just so much. I don't know if we could really fit it in, but I did get to a point where I went from just, pushing myself to push my limits, to dealing with the sensory overload and whatnot, from being at cafes to eventually taking that 30-minute drive by myself to Lake Michigan. And then,
You drove by yourself?
yeah, and eventually that evolved like a drag jump to me driving all the way to the Carolinas, almost completely by myself. I was with a friend from college, but
Yeah.
it was still a big journey, just driving all the way there and just being able to see the Atlantic Ocean for the first time, and being able to step into an ocean,
Mm-hmm.
when before all I've ever seen was like photos, and it
Mm-hmm.
was quite the experience. And then that evolved even further, where I drove from Chicago all the way to the Rocky Mountains completely by myself, did all the Airbnb, all the reserves and whatnot, with renting a car completely by myself, when before, well, let's just say before I had a real struggle just to being able to order a pizza, for delivery. So it was quite a lot. And then comes the competition where at first I wasn't even sure I was really ready for it, but push myself, and before I know it, I did my first entry video, and I was surprised when I ended up in the top 50 and went into it was split into 5 teams, and I was part of Team Jason with Jason Cisneros. And once again, I told my story, and just, again, I was just embraced by them, and it was during the part where we were trying to decide the nonprofit we were going to support, which for me, it was one I ended up discovering while I was searching, called Madison House Autism Foundation, where they help autistic adults being able to live as independent as possible, making sure they have a home to stay in so that their parents won't have to worry about what happens to them after they pass away. Are they going to end up on the street, or are they going to be ended up thrown in an institution and just forgotten? And just being able to live their lives carefree and happy, and it was like they all just instantly connected, and pretty much full support, just all the support. It's just,
It was great. I remember watching your videos when
yeah,
you were given the assignment by your coaches, and you always were there with your lovely videos. And then the challenge of doing the Facebook Lives. I
yeah,
mean, that is a challenge already to anyone doing Facebook Lives. The first Facebook Live I did, I was sweating like crazy because I
yeah,
wasn't used
same.
to looking at myself and talking, and I also didn't know how I came across. So it was quite the challenge for me, my first ever Facebook Live
Yeah,
and my first ever NGO Whisperer show. It was in a studio. Actually, you know what? Jason Cisneros was in season 1 of the NGO Whisperer show. So anyway, tell us your story.
it was just such a long journey of all the lessons I've learned from my coach, and even today still talking to him and still talking to other people, and connecting. And it just to be honest, when I first started my photography business, I really knew anything about business in the first place. So it was just me going from just learning as I go and making all the mistakes, and when I could have avoided them, to now having all this information from people just wanting to help each other out. And it's just it was it's hard for me to put into words, because it's just so overwhelming of just how much love, how much acceptance,
Yeah.
and just really working my butt off, and just doing my just really wanted to do my best so that I don't look back with any regrets, because I only have this one life, and despite all the struggles, and despite at times really doubting myself and just whether I can really do it, and not believing in myself at times, I just somehow managed to keep going, and just being able to have a group of people that just understand me just works miracles,
And we do. You have a group of people from around the world, including myself here at the NGO Whisperer, and we understand you. And we know that the daily struggles of life already makes it difficult for everybody, especially now with COVID.
Yeah.
How do you keep yourself focusing on what you're doing, and also during this COVID-19 period, how have you been able to position yourself so that you can move forward?
When it first happened, the first time I was thinking, wow, that was a really bad time to try to upgrade the expensive camera again. So, because right before COVID hit, and right around December was when I had that big trip, probably the biggest trip of my life, with a friend of mine from all the way back in elementary school, actually, to Cambodia and Thailand. So
Mhm.
just being able to experience a different culture, and at times really pushing my limits as well, because I was in Bangkok, Thailand for New Year's, and it was packed tighter than a can of sardines. So it really, really tested me.
Yeah.
But but my first thought when it felt like my business was capsizing, because I'm primarily an event photographer, and events throughout this entire year was canceled. So it's like my income was just wiped out. So the first thing I thought was, what tool, okay, what do I have right now that I could utilize in the meantime while I try to figure out how to pivot the business? Maybe what could I use? Maybe something that I did during the competition that, okay, see how this can evolve, which is eventually how the podcast got started through Autistic Eyes.
Mhm.
And then it was, the people having a hard time getting supplies, especially toilet paper, which I still don't understand why everyone ran to toilet paper, but but I also saw, like, how other people in the competition were able to help, and me figuring out what could I do to help. So that also started something that I called Autism Healing, which is basically just me doing live streams of me doing art with some meditative music, and doing kind of like a art healing session, just to be able to calm the nerves, and just being able to relax so that your mind can clear up. And then afterwards, maybe a new idea can pop up to help flip the situation around, kind of like how growing up, I used to do drawing a lot, which also I sometimes think was like a coping mechanism for me, kind of like a stimming, I guess you could say they call it for art, for people on the autistic spectrum, where it's kind of like, the fidgeting like this, or sometimes in more severe cases, they do like, it's a way that just being able to cope with all this sensory overload that's coming in. Because I guess the best way to describe it is kind of like the internet, where you have all this information that you're trying to download, but it's through like dial up. So
Yeah.
it becomes overwhelming. So, yeah, I just tried my best to keep focus, and also took Jason's advice in one of the other, I believe it was one of his podcast episodes, where just keep learning, and I did that with personal development, and also later on took a sales course from one of the other coaches in the competition, and just did my best to, keep my head straight, and just to keep moving forward, because what's the alternative,
Yeah.
And there was some successes, some not so successful, and at times it just kept building up and up until it did became too much. But I just, I guess what really helped me pull through was just the support, and from everyone else, that that I'm not alone, and there are people there for me. But in those moments, it could just be really, really easy to just forget that, just like that moment, those moments at that college cafeteria, where I'm surrounded by people but feel completely utterly alone, So it felt like that was coming back to me again. But yeah, but I'm ready to go back in the ring. So
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. What message do you have for people who are interested in collaborating with you, working with you? Could you invite people who are interested? Because you have the podcast through the
yeah.
Autistic Eye, you have the Art Autism to Artism.
Currently, right now, it just started as a little bit of a movement, but
Okay.
well, I don't want to say anything yet about it since it's still concept on how do I really move this forward to really, help ease suffering,
Mm-hmm.
And as for the podcast, I guess you could say I started not just to, regurgitate like autism statistics and information, but because I really wanted that human connection, because when you hear autism, you just hear the word or the condition instead of the person that's behind it, So I just wanted to kind of like me rediscovering the world with me
Mm-hmm.
going out and exploring, and then through the podcast of just interviewing different people on different subjects and then inviting them into my world by giving my own perspective with me having autism and how I see things, So
Right.
that's the general gist of the podcast that I'll be continuing with the next season in March. And I guess until I figure out how to, with autism to artism and how I'm going to move it forward, since, COVID kind of distracted me all year because of it.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say look up, I'll take the time to look up different nonprofits that support support the autistic community, but don't view it as like a disease that needs to be cured, because it's not a disease. It's just a neurological thing where you're just born with it, and I guess we just want to be understood, and have our place in the world. So Madison House Autism Foundation is one of them, and just to really do your research, just to make sure that you're donating to a place that's actually helping people instead helping the autistic community instead of detracting from it and making it kind of worse for them.
Absolutely. What message do you have for people in government, in corporate organizations who are looking to employ people who are on the autistic spectrum, or even nonprofits?
Just to see the positive and how we can help, because we do want to help and we do want to have our place in the world just like everyone else, but with how things with how we grew up and how we've been basically beaten down with everything in life, it helps to be able to help us pick ourselves up, and just being able to realize that we do have a place in the world, we do have a purpose, and we just need help to realize it. And it's just a matter of just having faith in us and just seeing the good things we can contribute, whether it could be something that's like really special, such as with me through art, or someone else that's really really good with calculating, or even someone that may not be simply be a normal person that just happens to have it, because that's kind of a stereotype of, oh, this autistic person must be a mathematic genius and whatnot. That sometimes Hollywood says, but that's not always the case. Sometimes it's just normal people just trying to do the best like everyone else, and we just have hurdles to come through. So it's just a matter of just working together to be able to understand each other and just see that we just all are people, you know.
Thank you so much, Christopher. Today, I have learned a lot from you. I've known you now for over 1 year, even through the interview, just learning how you think, you feel, and to see the world from your perspective. And it just makes it even easier when you tell people, just give me time. I'm thinking it's coming, and there it's coming, you know? That's amazing.
5 seconds, 4,
Yeah,
3,
yeah.
2, 1.5, 1.256.
It's really useful, you know, when you make fun and we laugh about things instead of sitting and being quiet and feeling so conscious. And I believe
Yeah.
you have found a way of communicating in a way that is so beautiful, and people give you the time as you think through, as you make those words and all that. But there's something you said on your website, and I am going to read it because it's one of the sayings that I'm just going to get it now. It says, visual arts are my first language. English is my second.
Yep.
When you said that, what inspired you at that point to say that?
It just felt like I was able to have an easier time being able to communicate through drawing than just speaking. So for me, I've been, you know, I guess doing art as long as I could remember, actually. And even my late mother, she was actually a really good artist as well. So it's like I kind of inherited that. And it just felt like at times I had an easier time just being able to draw all my ideas instead of writing them, and just being able to express more through that. So for me, it was just, there we go again.
Yeah, we are waiting. 5. You can do the countdown.
Oh, I should use that StreamYard countdown. That was like 30 seconds.
Oh yeah, you should have something that has a countdown and then it goes like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There it is.
Ding!
That would be fun. Next time you come on the show, we should have that. You have a countdown. I ask you a question and we discuss, and you're like, just give me a few minutes, and then there's the countdown, and then it comes. You should include that, some nice music or something, and you
Yeah.
can stand out and dance and do something, and then okay, let's go back to the interview. Awesome. It's been
That is a
such
good
an
idea.
honor. Yeah, that would be great. That would be great. I mean, think about it. Every time you feel anxious, and it's not just for people who are on the autistic spectrum. Even I get nervous sometimes when I go on stage and all that, and I have to look for a way to make sure that I control the nerves and I am in charge. And I tell myself things like, you are great, you are awesome. There are all sorts of things people tell themselves to prepare themselves when they go on stage. So you
Oh,
are
going on stage is the final frontier for me.
but you were on stage at the Next Global Impactor.
Yeah, and I was shaking like a leaf, let me tell you. I
You
was
shaking
nervous.
in those. I mean, I watched it. We featured you on the NGO Whisper magazine. I saw the photos. They were amazing. You didn't look like you were having a nerve wreck. No, you looked so composed and so chilled out.
And it took a lot to stay that way.
Well, you are not that person anymore. I mean, you traveled, you went to Asia, you spent New Year with I don't know how many thousand people in a crowd and had fun. So that is amazing. I mean, your growth and how you have transitioned. Of course, we are all transitioning. We all becoming.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yours is just amazing. I remember the first time I saw you when you had your first Facebook Live.
I decided that for myself
Okay.
because we always kept saying I support Team Jason, but the thing that kind of came to mind is, do they even know who Team Jason was? So it was
Yeah.
an idea that I've kind of got inspiration from seeing, other teams do it. I remember kind of inspired by Jason, Lawrence Michael Harris, who also co-hosts the Next Impactor, and also one of the competitors, Teresa Snyder, that also did live streams. And I figured, you know what, I'm going to try this. And well, here we are now.
Now you're a podcaster. Look at that.
Yeah. I never thought I would be in this position in a million years, but
Here we are. Here we are. Amazing things happen, as you said. When you just take that one step, amazing things happen. When you just decided to go and say hi to the colleagues, to your classmates or college mates who are having lunch and discussing, and see where we are. Amazing things happen now. Did you ever know that you would be on the NGO Whisperer show? No. I mean, we talked about it, but it seemed so far away and all that, and here we are. So nothing is impossible.
And it's all because of just pushing out comfort zone, which I remember a quote from Temple Grandin as advice for parents with autistic kids is to always keep trying to push them out of the comfort zone little by little. That's really important in order for them to be able to adapt. And that's something that my late mother did when she had me reluctantly go into choir. But it kind of half worked because it did get me interacting with all my other classmates, but on stage it was like and I was unfortunate to be a tenor at the time and shoved all the way in the front, so it was like I want to hide. I don't like all those eyes looking at me. And
but you're very tall, so you stand out in any crowd anyway.
Yeah, and that's another thing with autism. For me, it's really, really hard for me to be able to look at someone in the eyes, and almost to the point where it feels like it's painful. So, and I know there was a scientific study that was done studying it, and there was a reason. It had something to do with the way the brain reacts, but that's kind of off the top of my head at the moment. It was a while back that I read it, and just all the other things I've learned, such as your gut health and all this other stuff.
Wonderful. It's been a beautiful interview. I want to continue having this conversation, but we have to end it. Thank you so much, Christopher, for joining us today. It's been an honor. It's been a pleasure. You've opened our eyes to see through the autistic eye, which is what you do with your podcast. I am truly honored here at the NGO Whisperer to have you on our show today.
Well, I'm honored to be on here. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, we invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We also invite you to follow Christopher D. Casson on social media, on Facebook, and also on YouTube on his channel through the Autistic Eye, and listen to his amazing podcast where he takes you through life through the autistic eyes. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been an honor and a pleasure to have you today. Remember, it's all about connecting people, raising funds, and impacting lives.